אנחנו שמחים לומר שלום ובוקר טוב לגנרל ג'ון אלן, שעמד בראש הקואליציה הבינלאומית נגד דאעש. Sir, good morning and welcome to our studio.
Good morning, it's good to be here.
Thank you for joining us. We've been hearing in the past few days that the war against ISIS is over. Everybody won. I mean, we won. Is it true?
Well, I think the whole issue with respect to ISIS is the idea behind it. And until we've defeated the idea of this organization, then it's really not defeated. ISIS existed in three forms. It existed in a core element in Iraq and Syria. It expanded ultimately to have what we call provinces in places like North Africa, in the Middle East, in South Asia, and in Southeast Asia. And very importantly, ISIS has put down very strong roots on the internet. So it really exists in three forms. And even on the core area in Syria and Iraq, you can degrade the military capabilities. But this organization from the very beginning has had the capacity to slip along a spectrum of capabilities from conventional infantry down to the individual suicide bomber.
So you can actually destroy a bastion in Iraq or in Syria, but you cannot destroy the idea itself that can be quiet for a while and then arise again.
It's like Al-Qaeda. For a very long time, Al-Qaeda has been difficult to find, but it still exists both as small cells and individuals, but the idea still exists as well. So this, in the end, is a war of ideas, not just a physical conflict.
What do you say to President Trump when he wants to pull out from Syria, saying, well, the war is over, we won this?
Well, we haven't won. So my advice to him would be to consider very carefully what happens when we pull the forces out, relatively small number of forces that have accomplished so much to degrade the capabilities of the Islamic State. Now, you've got to be very careful. You can win the battle and then lose the peace. And what's very, very important is that those forces on the ground in northeast Syria were creating stabilization and stabilizing the liberated population so that over the long term, this is the point, you can defeat the idea that made Daesh attractive to begin with.
So you consider his decision as a mistake?
I consider that he needed more advice to have made that decision and to understand the full implications of it. Because in many respects, the American departure from Syria turns the Syrian war and our leverage over to the Russians and Bashar al-Assad. It gives the Iranians other opportunities that we would not have wanted them to have. And our fear is it may have made this more difficult for Israel.
But President Trump's policy is to pull out from everywhere. Syria, now Afghanistan is next probably. And he always says, well, we are pulling out because we've been fighting for too many years for other countries. Let them fight. Let them win the wars. Do you accept this kind of policy?
Well, look, I had hundreds of troops killed under my command in Afghanistan. Many of them were from other countries. And the price they paid to fight alongside us in Afghanistan to defeat that evil was a high price in many of those countries. So the idea that they are not pulling their weight, that they are not participating at the same level of America, that's just incorrect. We have been fighting as coalitions for many, many years. America's capacity to extend its influence isn't because of its unilateral capacity. It's because our foreign policy has always relied on relationships, transformational relationships, where we were able to accomplish our objectives as a partnership. Coalitions, in fact, will never be equal in terms of what individual countries can give. We simply have to accept that.
But as a fact, nobody's going to fight your wars, I mean, America's wars instead of you. If America pulls out from Syria, from Afghanistan, from other places, then who's going to be there?
You're exactly correct. And the thing that America brings to almost any difficulty in the world is global leadership and global reach. And global reach can be economic reach, it could be political reach.
That's over these days?
Well, I don't think it's over, but I think we need to consider very carefully what American leadership means in the 21st century.
You know, we've heard about a negotiation between U.S. and the terror movements such as Taliban. Is it true?
Oh, yes. If you've been following the reporting recently, Ambassador Khalilzad, who is a very experienced American diplomat, who knows the Middle East and Afghanistan very well, he's actually an Afghan by birth, is reporting that he's had some significant progress, probably the greatest progress to date in the negotiations with the Taliban in Doha.
General, you have a great experience in the Middle East. You know almost everybody, every country, everything that's going on here for so many years. Now, when America pulls out, the Russians are coming in. And many countries, including Arab countries and the countries in the Gulf, are saying, if we can't call Washington, we're going to call Moscow. Are you worried about this kind of shift in leadership and power?
Sure. Again, I mentioned a moment ago, what is the role of the United States in the 21st century? I think several things. First, America and the United States will always remain committed to Israel. I think that's a given, no matter what. No matter who's in the White House, that's going to be the case. Number two, we have the emergence of China as a major global power, and then we have the reinsertion of Russia into the Middle East. And I think as this administration goes on, it's discovering that you have to stand up to the leadership responsibilities that the United States have had now since the end of World War II and the end of the Cold War. And recently, Secretary Pompeo has been very clear on a couple of occasions in Cairo and elsewhere that the United States is in the Middle East to stay. We don't need to be influential in the Middle East by having hundreds of thousands of troops here, but we still have bases in some key locations, and those are going to remain.
And is that enough to influence and to have an impact on this crazy part of the world?
Well, once again, this is an environment in which we have to work with friends and we have to work with allies, and I think the United States has been very clear in the last couple of years that our friends are clear to us and our opponents are clear to us. And one of the things that we have to ensure is that we strengthen our friends in the region, and that can come in many ways, but we also oppose the malevolent forces that are in the region, and that's primarily Iran.
Well, the good news, the war is not over.
The good news is there's more to be done.
More to be done. General Allen, we want to thank you so much for coming to our studio. Thank you so much, sir.
It's an honor to be with you, and
It's an honor
thank you
to be with you.
for
Thank you,
letting me
sir.
be with you.